when you get your body healthy, it almost makes everything easier to an extent. And that, one of the coolest things that we see is that it's actually the family effect. It's not just the business effect, it's actually the family effect. So with their families, they're noticing that when they're coming home, they're more engaged with their spouse, more engaged with their kids, because they actually have more energy to almost like give to them.
Hello, everybody. You're listening to Chatting with Candice. I'm your host, Candice Horback. Before we get started on this week's episode, if you want to support the podcast, you can go to chattingwithcandice.com. From there, you can sign up for our Patreon account where you get early access to episodes and sneak peeks at future guests. Or you can click that little link that says Buy Me Coffee. Both things help me out a ton. All of the funds are actually going right back into the podcast, so it's going to help improve quality, get some advertisements out there, and hopefully start to scale this baby. A quick word from one of our sponsors, and I feel like it's really appropriate with the guests that we have. So I'm a huge fan of CBD, and this company called Amura has a line that is called Libertine. So this is their CBD line. They have these really cool heat, no burn gadgets with precisely measured out CBD flower, which is my preferred method. I just love the flower when it comes to the plants versus like the vape liquid and all of that. So you get these really chic and sleek looking devices, and you get the purest version of the CBD. So we're actually going to be doing a giveaway with these babies. So if you want your chance to win one of these for free with some CBD flower, all you have to do is make sure that you are following me on social media, tag 2 buddies on this post for this episode, and tag Amura, and I will send out these to 4 lucky winners, and it will come with 1 pack of CBD flower. So what's really cool when you get these babies is that you get like a little, almost like a wine list. It gives you like the tasting notes. It gives you the chemical breakdown of each of the flowers. So that's pretty cool for anyone that likes that information. And then if you just want to your very own, if you don't want to, wait to see if you're one of the winners, you can go to amura.com. It's OMURA.com and use code Candice to get 15% off. If you are a user and you do dig it, let me know. Tag me, tag the company. We'd both appreciate it. So now that all of my shameless plugs are through, please help me welcome Dan Go. Dan Go is the #1 body transformation coach to entrepreneurs. He is the founder of highperformancefounder.com. He's got a really cool Twitter account, and I got connected with him with a couple of mutual friends online. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this conversation. We get into health, fitness, diet, wellness, parenting, all of that good stuff. So enjoy. I was really stoked that you wanted to come on, because for the longest time I've been having a lot of requests for like a health and nutrition episode, and I think the way that women look at fitness and health is very different than the way that men attack that same issue. So I definitely want to be able to get it from both angles, because that's obviously beneficial for everybody. And then I heard you're a new dad, right? So
Yes, yes.
congratulations. How old?
Thank you. She's 13 months old, and it's going fast.
Oh,
It's going
yeah.
super fast. Yeah,
Yep. We
yeah.
have a 1.5-year-old, and it's like,
Nice.
whoo, time moves different. I'm like,
Oh wow, is a he or
he,
she or
yeah.
okay, and then is he starting to walk right now?
Oh my gosh, running, climbing, like
Oh
he's
man.
very kinesthetic. So we finally got a mama like 2 days ago. And then he says, I do instead of yes. So he says, I do, mama, and dog and ball. That's all we have. But
Yeah.
movement wise, he excels.
That's awesome. We're living in Costa Rica right now, so he's and his mother-in-law, or sorry, not his, but my daughter's mother-in-law is Chinese, and we're speaking English. He's literally, or she, our daughter Koa is just getting like Spanish, English, and Chinese all spoken to her at the same time right now.
Oh,
So
amazing.
yeah, it is. It is. It's kind of cool. She's picking up. She's picking it up. Not walking yet, but I don't think I'm in any rush for that to happen right now.
No, I feel like one develops first,
Yeah.
right? And then that they kind of like sharpen that tool and then they move on to the next skill set.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
wish that I was so my dad's Japanese, he's like from Japan and he like was so lazy about it. I was like, "Why didn't you give me that advantage because it's such an advantage to be bi or trilingual
Yeah.
or, as many as you can pick up." So good for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Did your dad immigrate to the States by any chance?
Yeah, he did.
Okay. Yeah, I find that with sort of like immigrant parents, sometimes they want you to almost acclimate yourself to the society as much as possible. So that means like even in my household, we speak this dialect of Chinese called Fujian, but they never, only when they were swearing at me they would actually use the language, but they never taught it to us. And part of the reason they did that, they explained later on, was they just want us to be as Canadian as humanly possible and to figure out the language thing later.
Mhm.
um, yeah. And then now that I'm here, 41 years old, and I'm like, I wish you just were a little bit more tighter with that and gave me the second language,
Mhm.
stayed on top of it a little bit more. But here we are. We're all good.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a lot easier when you're younger, as are most
Yeah,
things to learn.
yeah, absolutely. I'm starting to realize that right now. Just watching people, even like around me, just like learning to surf. There's such a difference between watching a baby learn to surf and watching like almost like this 50-year-old man learn to surf. Yeah, it's almost like two different mindsets going into it. And I've been talking about this with a lot of my friends. It seems like as you get age, the one thing that we have to almost like fight against and be aware of is just this acclimation towards fear
Mhm.
and an acclimation towards security. So I, even for myself, like I'm trying to push myself and not do the old man thing and be like, oh, that's too old for me. I'm not going to do that anymore. And that's how we kind of like keep ourselves young. But anyways, I'm rambling right now. I'm rambling. We're talking about health and fitness in the beginning,
No,
I
but
believe.
mindset's a huge part of that, right? And then I
Yeah,
would
it
say,
is.
especially when you adjust, like the family dynamic shifts, which is a very real, like turning point for most people, like that becoming a parent, like that nothing
Mm,
rocks you quite like that. Like that's one of the biggest changes that you'll go through as a human.
yeah,
So I think I think it's really interesting that you focus on entrepreneurs because that's its own special mindset compared to like the average guy that walks into like a Planet Fitness, right? Very different people. Um, and then tackling someone who's maybe an entrepreneur and a new parent and they're married. So
mm,
how do you start to kind of cultivate the mindset of I need to prioritize my body when there's all of these other stressors coming at me, right? Because
yeah,
let's say you're the main provider, so you kind of tend to put your career at number one priority because that helps provide for your family, which is
yeah.
truly the number one priority, right? So how do you fit body in there? Because that seems like a vanity project.
It seems like a vanity project, but when we can change the perception of the body from vanity to a almost like a mindset of performance, then it's almost like we switch up their brains a little bit. So like when we take in entrepreneurs, they are dealing with almost like anywhere between 9 to 14 hour days, depending on what they're doing. They're also dealing with coming home and not having to deal with family, but raising their family after a long day of stressful work.
Mhm.
And and then at some point in time, they're like, "What is this all for? Why would I even try to get my body in shape?" And my counterpoint to that, and what we try to get our clients to see and what they see when they start to get results, is that health has the number one med effect on the rest of your life. So if you are unhealthy and you get your body into shape and you're doing healthy things like exercising, drinking water, eating a very clean whole food based diet, you actually see this next level of energy and performance. So when our clients actually start to see this, like they find themselves, they're not taking naps anymore. You're not, you're not waking up with brain fog anymore. They're not realizing how much they were kind of driving their car with like this parking brake on, because they've been dealing with almost like low energy and also low confidence as well, just having to deal with seeing their bodies every day and not doing anything about it. So when you get your body healthy, it almost makes everything easier to an extent. And that, one of the coolest things that we see is that it's actually the family effect. It's not just the business effect, it's actually the family effect. So with their families, they're noticing that when they're coming home, they're more engaged with their spouse, more engaged with their kids, because they actually have more energy to almost like give to them. And the second thing that we notice with them is that their family members start getting in on the act. Because if there's anything that we know about parents, and dads especially, is that they're the leaders of the family. So when they start hitting the gym, th- I've seen countless times when their sons and their daughters actually start going to the gym with them. They start eating healthy things and they start taking care of their bodies because the dad is doing it. So I look at health and I look at fitness as almost like this thing that makes your entire life better. And if we can see it from that angle, then maybe it makes us more willing to like do those things rather than like from a vanity angle.
Hmm. And if you're not operating at a peak performance, like if you're carrying a ton of extra weight, or like you let your body go to a point where you start getting like illness or
Mm,
autoimmune issues, then I mean, you can directly see the effect everywhere in your life. You won't be able to work if it gets so bad. You won't be able to maintain healthy relationships if it gets so bad. So I think we too often just write it off as I want washboard abs, and anyone who
yeah,
invests that time doesn't care about their business or is neglecting their family. It's all related. I think it's all about balance as well. So if you're at
yeah,
the gym for 5 hours a day and then that's all you're doing, well, that's maybe not a good idea if you have other goals.
yeah.
But it's kind of attacking it from like a healthy perspective. I was curious. So when it comes to getting into fitness, I find like it's very easy to overdo stuff, especially if you're talking to
Mm,
entrepreneurs, right? Like someone who's just like a go,
mm,
go, go kind of person. Um, how do you prevent, I guess, like a negative relationship with that? So for me, what I see, and just from what I've experienced as a woman, it's we tend to hyper focus on calories and we get a negative
mm,
relationship with food. So we end up
mhm.
actually eating foods that are worse for us and do more damage to our body, like diet, light, Splenda, all of these things. Because that's just like really dated nutritional information that we were raised with. And then with men, we see men that just want to be like the next, like, Schwarzenegger, and they're going to CrossFit and destroying their joints, or they're
Yeah,
trying to lift things that they have no business lifting. So how
yeah.
do you, I guess, check that ego and then cultivate a healthy relationship with diet and exercise?
Well, I think the first thing that has to happen is understanding our thoughts, beliefs, and how we approach diet and exercise in the first place. Because what this does is it almost like gives you a mirror into how people deal with their issues and problems. And I think most of the times, let's talk about diet just first. We can't necessarily switch up the diet and start eating clean and start eating high protein and do any of this kind of stuff unless we actually get down to the root issues of like why you actually eat so much in the first place. Why is it uncontrollable? So the very first part is actually bringing awareness to that. So with entrepreneurs, especially, or anyone, actually, like a lot of people deal with this. They actually deal with the aspect of stress eating and eating their emotions. And a lot of times they want to get tactical about it. So, okay, I got to count my calories and then I got to cut out carbs or I got to do this and that. I got to fast for like 3 days. But what they're doing is they're taking like a tool and trying to fix a symptom where they're not necessarily going into the causes as to like why they do these things in the first place. So we actually have to see what these behaviors are, and we have to see what the underlying reasons that they're actually doing these behaviors are. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it is kind of like figuring out what those emotions are, bringing awareness to it, and making sure that we're not necessarily going to eradicate it. I mean, that's never going to happen, but we want to set up a strategy where you're able to deal with it on a regular basis because it will come. And then afterwards, we want to make everything as simple as possible. So we do have a very boutique service, and obviously we work with a very specific clientele. We work with high achieving entrepreneurs. So what we do, it sounds so funny, but we try to actually make things as simple as humanly possible for them. So a lot of times you'll see trainers, okay, you got to count every single macro, and you got to do cardio on your off days, and you got to do cardio before your workouts, and you got to do this and that, and they will like try to attack this problem with as much intensity as possible. But the reality is that they're not in this fitness game. You know, they have a life, they have a family, and this may be like number three on the priority list, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we try to actually make things as simple as humanly possible for them. So one of the things that we do is we try to line up their nutrition with their schedules, because a lot of times they're trying to like follow these like 16-8 fasts and do all this kind of stuff, when the reality is that every single, actually I had a client say this to me, it's like, what is my diet called, what do you call this diet, I need to know. And I'm like, it is your name, diet. Okay, it is Lance, this is the Lance diet. Okay, and I feel like everyone needs a certain degree of specialization when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to kind of like fitting things into their schedule, and we want to make the diet almost as easy as humanly possible. And especially with entrepreneurs and people who have access to resources, one of the things that we love to do is find a very simple way in which you're getting prepared food in your hands, you know, in the most convenient way possible, whether that's through cooking on your own, meal delivery, or even getting like a personal chef. But again, main thing about the diet is to make it as simple as possible, and to almost like set up an environment in a way where it's going to be easy for your body to lose weight and to lose body fat in a sustainable way that's not making you feel hungry
Mm-hmm.
all the time. And the same thing goes with the workouts. I like to tell my clients that, hey, you didn't get your body out of shape in a matter of 6 weeks, so don't expect to get your body in shape in a matter of 6 weeks. And also, when it comes to the process of wanting to build muscle, and most entrepreneurs, they actually, a lot of them that I work with, they just want to lose like the gut. You know, that's all they want to do. They just want to lose the gut. They want to feel they want to feel confident about their body, and they want to feel like they're actually rocking this area of their life.
Mm-hmm.
So with the workouts, we make it very simple. We don't get them to do boatloads of cardio. We actually just get them to just like walk and just to do very light kind of active recovery type of stuff. And then
Mm-hmm.
we focus on the gym, and we focus on just building muscle in the gym. And actually, when it comes to building muscle in the gym, it doesn't really take that long either. It takes maybe like 45 minutes to an hour, 3 days a week. We don't want their lives to be interconnected with the gym whatsoever. That's my job. It's not theirs. And in general, when we're looking at the scope of what this person is dealing with, we have to hit it from an emotional angle. Okay, so why are we doing these things? And then we have to look at their schedules and be strategic about it and be like, okay, so when is going to be the perfect time for you to eat your meals?
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to get these meals prepared for you? How are we going to get these meals in your hands? And then we also strategize on the workouts. Okay, when are we going to do these workouts? You know, how are we going to actually make sure we stick them as well,
Mm-hmm.
and make this a part of your life that's almost like brushing your teeth.
Mm-hmm.
So we just get really strategic, and we try to specialize as much as humanly possible with every single client. And once they find kind of like what we say is like their natural rhythm of doing things, then it just makes things just really easy, you know. And a lot of it is like it's not necessarily trying to fit fitness into your, actually it's not trying to fit your life into fitness, it's actually trying to fit fitness into your life, right? It's trying to fit being in shape into your life, and not making it the whole idea of what your life is supposed to be about.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we try to do as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I think so I recently with having a baby and then like everything that was happening with the lockdowns, I wasn't going to work out with a mask on. Like that was
Mm.
just something that I thought was a little bit silly. Breathing in, all of your
Yeah.
CO2 while you're doing something that's that demanding. So I left the gym that I was with for a while and I loved the people. But they were just being really tight with the restrictions and I found a gym that wasn't. So
Yeah.
I went to that gym just so I could get movement in while I was waiting for things to kind of lift. And the problem was it was one of those boot camp classes.
Mm.
And when I signed up, I had told them when I had a baby X amount of months ago. This is me first getting back into movement regularly since that, but they definitely didn't relay that. And they have so many trainers. There's no way to really do that.
Yeah.
And they would push me so hard. I kid you not, for the first workout I did, I was probably so I have like 2 flights of stairs for my my house. Couldn't go up the stairs for like 2 weeks, was in agonizing pain, probably still dehydrated. And they're like,
Mhm.
lift more, lift heavier, do more reps. And I'm like, there is overtraining. You know what I mean? It does.
Yes.
I'm not trying to go to the Olympics. Also, when you do this and I can't work out properly for 2 weeks, you just did more damage. So I ended up not going to that gym and just not working out until all the restrictions lifted because I'm like, I can't win here. And I'm
Yeah.
so fascinated how boot camps kind of still exist because it is. I will look over and there will be a 250-pound man next to me, and we're supposed to do the same workout.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
It's so all things considered, I think boot camps and CrossFit are almost like, I'm not going to say they're the bane of fitness. And anyone who's watching and doing these things, if that gets you in shape, then more power to you. That's great. But when we think about how getting stronger, building muscle, and actually burning fat is, when we think about the basic tenets of these, it's not actually about like trying to like drive you into the ground as much as possible. It's actually about slowly building you up to where you're doing a little bit more than you did the day before,
Mhm.
and doing it in a way that's safe for you.
Mhm.
So I actually had this client, New York Times bestseller guy, is just freaking awesome. And he was doing CrossFit right before he met me. And he actually said to me, is like, are the workouts supposed to be this easy? Right. And I was like, yeah, dude, like take your rest, man. Chill out. Go tweet, go do your thing. And he was like, dude, after every single CrossFit class that he did, exercise is actually supposed to be this thing that makes you like super energetic. But he found himself, he was dragging his feet
Mhm.
because they were just driving him into the ground. And in general, it's like, you can't really do programming for everybody. Like programming a workout actually has to be specific, has to be individualized to the goals. And in general, when people invest into things, say like F45, say into like that boot camp or things of that nature, they're tying in this correlation that your exercise and how much you sweat is correlated to your results. When the reality is that it is actually has nothing to do with it whatsoever.
Mhm.
Yeah, and yeah, like workouts are supposed to actually build you up, make you stronger, give you more energy, and actually make you feel good instead of like driving down your body, making it super intense, and then making you have injuries, from one day to another, and having these nagging injuries.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm not necessarily a fan of boot camp workouts whatsoever. Not necessarily a fan of working out with your mask either. I think that's like ridiculous. I think that's yeah. I remember I tried like squatting heavy with a mask on, and it was almost like wearing those gas masks,
Mhm.
while you're trying to lift. I mean, apparently it's supposed to be good for MMA fighters, but not necessarily good if we're trying to be normal people trying to get a lift in.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
there was a time where people were showing those compilations of people just like passing out.
yeah,
And I was like, I'm glad it's out there. I'm glad people are sharing it. And I mean, if you're, again, people are going to come at me and you can look at other episodes. I'm all for wearing masks if you want to wear a mask. But I think there is a line when you see kids passing out at a track meet.
yeah.
Um, but so going back to like personalization, so there's this ad that my husband keeps seeing all over his social, and he's like, I have to put my VPN on because like they're watching me because he's like he's been really trying to research like diet and exercise since becoming a dad. Like I always joke like we
Yeah.
both had gained weight during the pregnancy, and he's hanging on to probably a little bit more than me at this point. Um, but the new thing that we're seeing ads for are fasting windows dependent
Mm,
on your body type. So there's like 864. And I'm just curious how much of that is like clickbaity. And if you were a fan of intermittent fasting or even doing like those 24-hour fasts that I know some like they tell a lot of women to do like 24 to 36 once a week, especially if you're like postmenopausal, and how much
yeah.
of that is accurate.
I feel like all of these, like a good amount of these ads, like the thing for fasting for your body type, are just clickbaity.
Okay.
I would say that are highly BS. There is no research out there that actually there's no research out there that actually says what body type you are actually. That's kind of like the thing that that's kind of like the most misconceived notion in fitness, is that this person's pudgy, so we're gonna call him, mesomorphic or whatever like that, and this person is this. When the reality is that actually has no basis in science whatsoever. That was, I think it was done as like I think it started off as almost like a marketing and advertising or sales kind of angle, but I'm not exactly too sure about that. But when it comes to fasting, what we know about it is actually actually not bad for digestion. So if people have IBS, if people actually have digestive issues, then it seems like doing anything from a period of like 16 to 24 hours for a fast is actually pretty good for your digestion.
Mm.
Apart from that, if we're thinking about burning fat, if we're thinking about, yeah, let's just say if we're thinking about burning fat, there is nothing to say that fasting is actually better than caloric restriction. There's nothing to say that fasting is even good for the muscle. Actually, I find that fasting is actually highly detrimental to if you want to keep and retain, if not build some muscle. And and the thing about fasting is that it's just a really cool way to reduce calories from going into your body. And I know we're talking about this, and I'll drop in one more thing about fasting, is that not many people talk about this. It's the fact that in a certain subset of people, when people fast, especially women, they find that there are higher levels of anxiety when
Oh.
they're actually in prolonged fasts. And I've seen this with myself. And another thing they don't talk about, say, with like fasting, is when people fast, they have almost uncontrollable hunger and appetite at the end of the day. So if they fasted for like 24 hours, you usually see someone just like scarfing down whatever calories that they've stayed away from that entire day in like one shot.
Mhm.
So it almost makes your appetite uncontrollable. Now, does it work for some people? It's great, especially for like people who are trying to like throw anything up at the wall to see if it sticks. Like people who are severely obese. I mean, like, I would say try everything. Usually, I actually find that these fad diets like keto and fasting, they work really well for people in that subset because
Mhm.
it gives them fast results and it gives them something that is very simple, and it also helps them like lose a shit ton of fat, without necessarily having to work too hard. But for people like, say, who are, maybe like if they're 15 pounds overweight, maybe like your husband, or
Mhm.
people like us where, we're pretty fit, we're where we want to be, then fasting is one of those things that is not necessarily going to be beneficial from a long-term angle. And my whole thing is just like, as we get older, so I'm 41 right now, and as I get older, I mean, I'm just looking to get stronger and to build muscle in a very slow and sustainable way. And to me, like the holy grail of body transformation, or just like getting healthy in general, is just to drop body fat and to increase muscle.
Mhm.
So with fasting in general, I don't think it's one of those. It actually helps you do one thing. It's not necessarily going to help you do the other. When it comes to just like diets in general, a lot of it is just like super fluff. And I do feel to a very large extent, I believe that everything has to be, again, tailored to the person. And I'm not talking about like body types. I'm not talking about like personality types, but maybe who knows. But
Blood types is a thing.
yeah, the
Have you seen
blood
that?
type diet. Yeah, I
I really
have, and
ugh,
it's
mine is, like, the most restrictive, so I'm like, "I don't care if this will make me look like Giselle because I wouldn't be able to eat anything."
yeah, and the thing about those blood type diets is just like it's just not accurate. I mean, it's not as accurate as we all think it is. And we're actually like, something that I say about science in general is that we actually have advanced very significantly, but there's a lot that we don't know. So a lot of like the stuff that people are kind of like using single studies on and just like pushing out there as like the truth, there is still a lot more research to be done behind it. So, but yeah, I mean, like, I don't believe in eating for your body type. I don't believe in eating for your blood type. I do believe in like just keeping things as simple as possible and then tuning it to your lifestyle.
Mhm.
And yeah, if certain foods don't agree with you, then we're not going to eat certain foods. But in general, we try to keep things as less restrictive as possible and as more attuned to what they do already.
Mhm. So, what about when it comes to boosting testosterone? Because that's one of like the really big claims of the intermittent fasting is that it's supposed to help boost testosterone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be hard to boost testosterone if you're limiting the amount of muscle you're able to build inside of a workout.
Mm.
So I think like, especially with like testosterone, I found that again, just it's foundational. So for me, I found the best testosterone, I guess, boosting cocktail is number one, let's not be fat, or let's not be overly fat,
Mhm.
right? Let's actually keep our body fats down to a nominal level and do whatever you can with your diet and exercise to make that happen.
Mm.
Number two is to actually lift heavy weights and to build muscle. And heavy weights is a very subjective term. It's just heavy according to what you think is heavy. And then the next one is just time in nature, time in the sun, making sure you're getting adequate vitamin D levels, just to make sure that it gives you that best environment to actually boost testosterone. And 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 that's pretty much it. I think people, especially with like guys, with especially with testosterone, they look at it as like as almost like that secret magic trick and that
Mhm.
like magic hack. So I don't know if your husband has been through this, but maybe you heard a couple of his friends are like, "Yeah, man, like I went to this testosterone doctor, and my T was like super low,
Mhm.
and now I'm like on testosterone, and technically I have to be on it forever, but now I'm on testosterone, my T levels are this."
Mhm.
And usually when I see people like that, it's like they haven't exhausted the natural means to get there
Mm.
at all. So, people who are getting like testosterone shots are not necessarily sleep. Actually, sorry, sleep is a big one. So they're not sleeping 8 hours a day. They're not hitting the gym and lifting heavy. They're not spending time in nature. They're not actually doing anything to diet down and get rid of their body fat. So they haven't even given themselves a chance. So they're actually taking, exogenous like testosterone to supplement it to kind of like fix a problem that is actually needed to be fixed by work and not necessarily by injections.
I didn't know that sunlight and nature were a part of that calculation.
So they do it in a very roundabout way, right? So I'm not going to say like, okay, well, if you get direct sunlight, then you're boosting testosterone by 25% or anything like that. But what time in nature and sunlight does is it actually helps reduce cortisol.
Mm.
So when you're reducing your stress levels and when you're spending time out in nature and when you're actually breathing in the greens and doing some forest bathing or maybe like laying out in the sun, whatever it is, it de-stresses you. It
Mhm.
lowers your cortisol levels, so that gives you again like a better chance at increasing your testosterone levels.
And that's your belly fat usually too, right, with men?
Yeah, it's that, yeah, the belly fat, what we call like android fat. We find that when people have an enormous gut, an enormous belly, then that alone is going to severely hamper their I guess their efforts towards boosting testosterone. And if I were to simplify, I'd be like, don't be fat, gain some muscle, spend time out in nature, and get your sleep. That's pretty much it.
Mhm. And then isn't it like large muscle groups as well? Like that's also a way. Like so, do incorporating legs every day to some
Yeah.
extent.
I don't know about legs every day, although that would be like so torturous, and you have to be super masochistic to want to do like legs every single day. Legs are like the bane of my society or bane of my existence. But when I think about the foundational exercises, yes, it is like the squat, it is the deadlift, it is the bench, it is some form of rowing, it is some form of overhead pulling, it is some form of overhead pressing, and some form of hip thrusting or hip hinging,
Mhm.
and maybe like a single leg movement in terms of that. And if you actually just focus on maybe those movements, then and actually just get progressively stronger in those, I feel like those would give you like the best, almost like the best environment to boost testosterone for yourself.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
because also with when you start taking the injections as well, I don't know if if you're trying to conceive is that kind of puts a hindrance on that. So,
yeah,
I remember the my husband's doctor was saying, "Well, we could put you on this, but we know you guys want to have another kid and so yeah, that's not an option for him."
yeah. It's well, I don't want to talk about your husband when he's not in the room and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, if he did, like, I mean, are you guys actually trying to get like kids again,
Mhm.
or try to have multiple? How many kids do you want?
We want like 2. I say 2,
Yeah.
but then there's like those really amazing days and you're like, I could have a lot of kids. And he's like,
So,
Candace, we need to talk.
yeah,
I
so
do
true.
not want 10 kids. Like,
So we
okay,
actually
yeah.
said we actually said one,
Uh-huh.
and then things are so going so good with our daughter that sometimes like you give the eye to your spouse, you're like, hey, what
Yeah.
do you think about like one more, a
Uh-huh.
couple more?
Mhm.
Yeah. So let's just say like your husband he wants to boost testosterone. It's really just like, okay, well, let's drop the body fat bit, bud.
Mhm.
Let's actually do that.
Mhm.
Let's just hit the gym and let's just kind of like keep things as simple as humanly possible. And we also have to consider the fact that when you have a kid, especially from a guy's perspective, testosterone drops, right? So
Mhm.
there's this like significant drop of testosterone when you have a child. And I have my own theory around this as well,
What's your
right?
theory?
So my theory is that people find there's a correlation between the drop in testosterone and having a child because of the fact that guys, when they have a child, and actually just guys and women, or whatever whatever nouns you want to use, but when they actually have a child, they're not getting sleep, they are not exercising, they are eating like crap because they're not getting sleep. And then this is the cocktail to drop your testosterone. You're not going out in nature as much as you want. You're not free. You basically have a kid
Mhm.
24/7. So that's my theory. I think like what happens when you have a kid is like all the things that you're doing that were healthy kind of go out the window because you're trying to take care of this kid. You have to refine those, but then those are the reasons why your testosterone is actually dropping.
Do you wanna hear the evolutionary biologist,
Yes.
theory? So, they say that the reason that the dad's, T drops so significantly when the baby's born is that essentially, like, in the caveman eras, you would want him to, like, stay and help take care of the baby and not, like, go out hunting and go out and
Mm,
try to find, like, the next hot thing to spread the seed. So you kinda want him to be, like, a little bit calmer, a little bit more tame so that he stays in the cave.
interesting. So
Mhm.
it's
Right?
it's an evolution. It could be an evolutionary thing, but okay. So
On top of what you mentioned, because that also usually does happen as well. So now you're
it's
double
oh man,
whammy.
I don't know. I don't know because even as like a guy and even as a husband, it's like it's like that switch is still there, you know?
Mhm.
And I'm not gonna say this, I don't want to get too in depth into this, but I'm gonna say that it's like when you have your first child, I've found that you actually get more intimate with your partner.
Mhm.
And I think there's something to this as well. I think there's something to it where it's like you're almost like born to procreate. So you're gonna want to have like more intimacy with like your partner and stuff. But that I've never heard that theory before. I think it's kind of cool. But then like when we were cavemen, weren't we just like going all over the place and just like having sex with like different ladies and clubbing them over the head and bringing them back home? I could be totally wrong. Like my evolutionary biology is like not up to par whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't think men tended to be monogamous.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
yeah, yeah. Shoot, the body's so weird, man.
Yeah,
So weird.
yeah, it,
Yeah,
like remembers from hundreds of thousands of years ago. And we're just trying
yeah.
to update it slowly.
If you think about it, like we have the same brain. We actually have the same hardware from like 10 to 20,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Literally have the same hardware. We have the same, almost pretty much like the same software. Maybe not, depending on what people do with
On
their
the
brains.
individual,
But
yeah.
yeah, yeah. But we don't have anything different. But I do believe the lifestyle's changing. Well, I mean, not do believe, but it is changing.
Mm-hmm.
Even right now, we're like sitting down, having this podcast. When in reality, it's like we would be moving.
Mm-hmm.
We would actually be like out and about and be hunting, we'd be like doing whatever, but we'd be in constant movement. So it's like we have these prehistoric bodies with this new age lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
and we're all trying to figure it out right now. All trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like a simple recipe to kind of fix the ailments that we're seeing, which is like lack of energy and maybe bodies that are carrying around a little bit of extra weight that maybe we know shouldn't be there, is to kind of counter those changes. Like, we know we're sitting
Yeah.
on Zoom for 2 hours or whatever it is, so maybe put in the extra effort to like go for a walk. And I think that's so important too, as you mentioned with your clients. Is that something that you recommend even more than doing all this hard cardio? Because
Yes.
people don't realize how much you can destroy your joints from running, right? Like,
Yes.
it might make you lose a little bit of weight faster, but walking can be just as good for you and has like what I would say are more long-term benefits because it's sustainable.
Yeah. And with walking, it's one of the most like amazing forms of active recovery.
Mhm.
And just from an anecdotal standpoint, it's like when you go for a 15-minute walk, you're going out in nature, you just come back like a very more peaceful person.
Mhm.
And I find that like I don't get any of my clients to do cardio at least right off the bat, right? And
Mhm.
I just don't even get them on the treadmill. And every single one of them, actually about 50% of them are like, thank God. And the other 50% is, dude, where's my cardio, man? Like, you know what? And I do this for a very specific reason. And it's because cardio has this law of diminishing returns, right? So the more cardio you do, the more detrimental it becomes to your body, and the more you actually have to do it to elicit the same benefits. So,
Mm.
for a guy who goes like, let's just say, like for a guy who goes on the 20-minute runs, first time running, and goes on 20-minute run, does this like 5 times, and does it for like a full on like 3 weeks, he's going to find that he actually lost a good amount of weight just doing that. Then he loses the amount of weight. He keeps on doing this. He finds that after like 6 weeks, the results are actually slowing down. They're not coming as fast. So he actually finds that he has to up his cardio. He has to increase the amount of time that he does it. And then what that does is that also increases the chances of injuries and joints and almost like joint instability because you are putting more pounds on your joints. You're putting more like repetitions on them. So as you actually have to do more, your body is almost like needing to do less. And that's why I call it like the law of diminishing returns with cardio. It's like in order to elicit the same like fat burning effect, you actually have to keep on doing more incrementally. You have to keep on progressively overloading it. When the reality is that we don't have to use cardio to lose any weight or to burn off any fat. If you want to do it for the brain boosting benefits, I say right on. Like you want to do it, you want to turn on your brain. I say go ahead, go for a 10-minute hit run, go for a 10-minute hit session, and that's one of the best ways to turn on your brain.
Mm.
But if you're doing it specifically for weight loss and to lose weight or to burn calories, then it's almost like you're just fighting a losing game, I find. And you can get the same benefits that you get from cardio that you can get from walking. It's all in the distance. So if you want to do a kilometer, go walk a kilometer
Mhm.
instead of running a kilometer. It's going to be much easier on your body. You're going to get much more. You're actually going to get just as much of a mental benefit than you did with the actual running. It may take a little bit longer, yes, but again, you're doing a solid for your body over the long term,
Mm.
rather than trying to trade off your body in order to lose some weight.
Mhm. So, I guess are those decisions also funneled through longevity? So, like, that's something that's really trendy right now is everyone wants to live to be
Yeah,
like 130 years old or forever
for
in
sure.
some cases. And when it comes to like marathon runners or like Olympic heavy lifters, like that's not the recipe for longevity. So, do you
Yeah.
kind of make your clients' protocols based off of that as well and like educate them on that? Or is it dependent on whether that's a goal of theirs?
Longevity is always a goal. I've never met anyone that's just came to me and was like, you know what, I want to live this life as fast as humanly possible. It's like, everyone wants to stay here. So I look at it from an aspect of two things. So one is the quantity of life, so the length of your life. And when we get to the length of your life, there's one very specific thing that we know is that if you're in a long-term caloric deficit, then you're doing it with whole foods, with nutritious foods, you're keeping your weight down. That actually gives you the best bet to to living as long as humanly possible. Now, there's the other thing, which is quality. So I as you get older, what happens is that you just wither and you just almost like fade. So it's on us. I'm 41 right now, and I have to do everything I can to make sure I am keeping my level of performance at a specific level, at a level that I'm very satisfied with. And I understand that, if you can actually do these things like as you're 41 or as you're 31 or whatever age that you are, then you can increase that quality of life that usually old people miss. Or not old people, I don't want to call them old people, but the elderly. If they're elderly and they haven't worked out, they haven't exercised, they haven't built muscle, they haven't done any kind of like mobility or stretching, then they're going to have a very uniquely different quality of life than someone who has been to the gym, has been exercising, has been taking care of his body, and also has been doing some form of like mobility. So when it comes to the quality of life, I actually think muscle is that secret, right? Because it is the one thing in our bodies that actually starts to dwindle by the time we get down, by the time we get to the age of 30, and it
Mm,
starts to decrease if we don't keep it up. And the thing is that it's not just your muscles; it's also strengthening your joints. You want to make sure that your joints are strong. You don't want to hit hip replacement surgery at like 65 or 70. You want to actually have a solid body from a joint perspective and from a muscle perspective. And I think the more muscle, you don't have to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, definitely don't have to be him, but the more muscle that you have on your body, the more you're going to be able to do really cool stuff as you age. And I actually do think that to a certain degree, it keeps me young as well. It keeps me young. I have this, like, again, this theory where I think it like stretches your skin and just like it just like keeps it in a perfect place or whatever. But again, there's just something to be said about just the weightlifting and being able to feel and look young. So again, if you want to live the longest that you want to live, and I tell my clients this all the time, is like find a way of eating that keeps you at a weight that you're very happy with, and that's going to be healthy, and do as much as you can to build as much muscle as possible. And again, you're not going to be Arnold. You can expect maybe 1 pound of muscle gained within like a 12 to 16 week time frame, maybe
mm,
even longer depending on how trained you are. So yeah, it's more quality and quantity, and when we get these two things going together, man, you just see those videos on TikTok and Instagram of like 56, 60 year olds doing like L sits and stuff, and if I were to create like the most perfect society, I would almost want to have everyone geared towards that, and just being like the most, that's not jacked, but the most fit human beings as possible, no matter what their age is.
mm-hmm. Yeah, there's just a certain level of like mental clarity that kicks in once you are moving every day. And it doesn't have to be intense, but just like moving with intention every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were designed to move, right? I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
if we're not moving our bodies, then essentially we're not doing anything to build and also protect our brains. And oh man, I always say this on Twitter every single time. I'm like, hey, the harder you work your body, the better your brain's going to work. And then some guy on Twitter replies back, well, Stephen Hawking has something to say to you right now. Right?
No.
They'll always say something like the exception or whatever it is. And now I'm just like, okay, well, I always expect it.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, if we actually look at the bevy of research that we have right now, we know that there's a brain body connection. We know that we were meant to, and we are actually talking about this very earlier. It's like, as humans, we have these prehistoric bodies that were meant to move,
Mm-hmm.
that were meant to be in motion. So when we're sitting down and when we're kind of like being having this sedentary life, it's almost like an affront to our brains. And there's a very specific reason why you exercise, and then you have all these crazy ideas and you have all these creative stuff coming out of your brain. It's because you are literally, it is like exercise is like the on switch for your brain, and it doesn't matter how you get it. Personally, for me, I think you get the most ROI from lifting,
Mm,
because you get your heart health, you get your lung health, you build muscle, you protect your joints. I just see it as like a win-win-win, as long as as long as you intend to do it properly and with good form.
mm-hmm.
And in general, it's just like, it's just set yourself up as much as humanly possible to be as fit as you can. Yeah.
So have you played around with like any of these like trendy workouts or trendy diets and then done like blood tests to see if that affects like your biological age at all?
I okay. The blood test thing I have not done,
Mhm.
but I have done countless DEXA scans. And for me, a lot of people go to blood work, and that's cool. I find like I'm a DEXA. So a DEXA scan is like the most accurate body fat scan that you can get in the entire world, at least right now. You should never get your body fat tested by in bodies or any kind of like things that you have to hold on to. You want to get like a proper DEXA scan. So I've like poured over maybe hundreds of DEXA scans over the course of the last like 2 or 3 years, and we found very specific things. So number one is when we're looking at a DEXA scan, obviously we're looking at body fat, we're looking at lean mass, we're also looking at other areas of your body. So you have this thing called android fat, which is almost like the fat between your neck and the bottom of your waist, your trunk area, and that is actually the most active fat that you have in your body, so it's the most dangerous. And
Mm.
then you have your gynoid fat, which we don't really care about. It's kind of like the subcutaneous stuff. It's like cellulite. It doesn't have an effect on your health. It just looks a certain way. And we also get into this thing called visceral adipose tissue, which is the amount of highly active fat that you have in and around your organs. So
Mm.
by doing these DEXA scans, we found very specific things in regards to things that work and things that don't. Number one is we find that people are, especially beginners and people who are just restarting on fitness, like people who haven't hit the gym in a long time. These guys can actually be considered ranked beginners because they have this muscle memory. They can always gain back this muscle. So we find with guys that are beginning or just restarting that they have a very significant chance to burn body fat and gain lean mass at the same time. And a guy who is like, say, a bodybuilder who's been in the gym very consistently for the past like 10 years,
Mhm.
he's not necessarily going to be able to see that happen with himself. But with a guy like who's just restarting, you can actually build muscle and burn body fat at the same time. It's very real, and we've actually seen this on our DEXA scans, and we've seen it with 57-year-olds, which is
Wow.
ridiculous. Yeah, so I actually just did an interview with this guy, and he's a client, and he basically at 57 years old, he dropped his body fat by a factor of 30 pounds, like we're saying pure body fat, and he
Whoa.
gained I think 7 pounds of lean mass in a span of about 16 weeks. And okay, so there's a couple of things
Six
that actually
weeks?
contribute. And no, 16. Sorry, 16.
16. Okay, I was
Yeah,
like,
16
holy
weeks.
cow.
Yeah, so we find that that's just an example. We found that that happens a lot, especially with guys that we are just talking about. And there's a couple of reasons for this. So number one is we put people on highly, like super high. Well, I won't say super high, but I would say moderately high protein diets.
Mm.
Because if there's anything that we know about protein, it's that it's highly thermogenic. That's number one, and it also has the highest dietary. It actually has the highest dietary induced thermogenesis, which means it's like the most fat burning, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
The other thing that we realize is that it actually helps you build muscle. So we try to line up our clients' diets with actually a little bit more protein than what people would normally recommend. That's the first thing. The second thing is we obviously clean the diet up. They're not going to be eating pizzas and beers and like all this kind of stuff. We try to actually make their bodies as like environmentally fat burning friendly as possible. And the other thing that we do is we progressively overload their bodies inside of the gym. We actually have a very like we have a 3 day split for them. It's especially for beginners. We do less. We don't do more, and because you can do so much more with actually just like a limited amount of time. And what we do is we progressively overload their bodies. We have them starting with very basic weights, and then slowly but surely, by the time they get to like the 6th or 8th week, they're doing more weight than they've ever done in their entire life in a very safe way.
Mhm.
So we feel like those two things and the dropping of the body fat, the changing of the diet, we feel like these two things actually help them again, like drop body fat and increase muscle, and then the subsequent blood work that comes along with it comes out all positive. Like especially with the last client that we were talking about, and countless other clients. We've actually got them off of their blood sugar medications. We've got some of them off of their insulin, and actually with that client, we got him off of blood sugar, and we also got him off this heart medicine as well. But not saying that what we did was the thing that did it, but in general, we find that when their body fat levels are down, when their muscle is increasing, that actually brings out almost like the best blood work. And we don't necessarily have to focus on eating certain foods or doing anything. We just focus on those two things.
Mhm. So with those scans that you were talking about, is that something that anyone can go do, or is like a special piece of equipment that they can buy, or where can they
Uh,
access that?
they just go, so it's DEXA, and then they would have to pay for getting the scan. It would be anywhere between, let's say, like 50 to $125.
Mhm.
And they could just like basically go Google and search out their city and DEXA scan, and there's going to be someone out there that actually has a DEXA scan. Now, I would not say to buy this. It's like I think it's like a few. It's like five figures to get this piece of equipment in your.
Okay.
Yeah, and you need a qualified health professional to do it. because it's working with X-rays and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, if
Mm-hmm.
they search a city, they search DEXA scan. I feel like that's one of the best ways to actually assess you, and one
Mm-hmm.
of the most accurate ways. It's like getting an audit for your body, and I recommend everybody get it.
Now, is there a specific window that's recommended for like age, sex, and like height, all of that? Is there like boxes that they kind of want you to ideally
Yeah.
fit into?
Yeah, I mean, you have they give you almost like the age and the new average of what body fat should be.
Okay.
So yeah, they'll tell you like what body fat that you should be. Personally, for me, when I'm dealing with let's just say like a female client, I would want her body fat to be anywhere between 17 to 25%.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm dealing with a male client, I want his body fat to be lower. I want his body fat to be anywhere between, I'd say, like 16 to 20%. And in general, I found that those are the ranges, almost like regardless of age. I mean, if they're like 80 years old, you don't necessarily want that ratio. But
Mm-hmm.
again, for people between, like, say, like 30 to 60, that's a pretty good ratio to be between. Yeah.
Oh, fun. I want to go do that now. I'm gonna look it up
Oh,
after.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Where are you located out of?
Oh, Wilmington, North Carolina.
Okay. Okay. Cool. I can help you find one as well, just to make sure you got a legit one. And then again, when you're doing this DEXA, obviously they're going to give you the body fat, the lean mass. See if you can get one that actually gives you the andro or actually the visceral adipose tissue,
Okay.
because that's one that not a lot of them do. And then once you get that, then it actually shows you like how much of this dangerous fat you have on your body. You can actually test yourself again the next time you
Mm,
get this DEXA to see if it actually goes down.
so cool. So, is there a relation to that visceral fat compared to like that trunk fat? Like, is it possible to
Yeah.
have a lot of trunk fat and zero visceral fat, or like very
No.
little visceral fat?
Uh, no. Well, actually, so what they give you is almost like a calculation based on your android region,
Okay.
right? So this trunk fat
Uh
right
huh.
here, and no, if you have like a huge belly, you're not like the world's strongest man, and you
Hmm.
have this massive belly, then that is a correlation to having increased visceral adipose tissue on your body.
Okay, so they
Yeah.
do go hand in hand.
Oh, for sure. Belly fat and the visceral adipose tissue are yeah, they're two peas in a pod.
And those are usually related to heart issues as well.
So it is related to heart issues and other preventable diseases. Things like obviously like type 2 diabetes. It's correlated with certain forms of cancer. It's
Mm,
correlated with certain with prevention or preventable heart disease,
mm,
and also just like a reduction of your hormones and testosterone levels.
mm-hmm. So, with it's type 2 diabetes that you get basically off of
Yes.
health, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
So with that, I guess first when it comes to preventing it, like that's pretty much just having a clean diet and moving, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So when it
It's
comes
it's
to
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, you're fine. So when it comes to reversing it, like is there a specific protocol that you attack with that? Because what's
Yeah.
interesting, I know some people that have it and you would look at them and you wouldn't say that they were out of shape, right? Because they're probably thin. They definitely don't have a lot of muscle tone. So like you were tweeting the other day, like they're like the skinny
Mm.
fat. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily being like obese or visibly fat that can get you there. So I guess when you're tackling that with
Yeah.
someone who's like skinny fat, is that different than someone who's overtly
Yeah.
overweight?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And skinny fat is one of those like just things that no one necessarily talks about, but I actually find it to be somewhat worse than being obese,
Mm,
because you're still open to the same diseases. And yet, at the same time, at least obese people actually have muscle. They actually have a semblance of muscle on their bodies. That's why you see like some obese guys out there. They have like massive calves. And you're just like, damn, how'd you get those calves? you know. But with skinny fat people, you have to approach it in a very different way. And it's also it comes to a choice, right? So let's just say we're dealing with someone that has 40 pounds to lose, and or 50, whatever it is.
hmm
You have a good significant amount of pounds to lose. So obviously, the one thing that we're going to do is we're going to target fat loss, and this comes with changing up your diet, eating a certain way, and making sure that you're also keeping and retaining your muscle, right? With skinny fat people, it's a little bit different. It's almost like you have to make a choice. Hey, are we going to choose to gain muscle, or are we going to choose to burn fat? And usually, depending on the situation, we like to say, okay, let's choose to burn fat, but then I have to prepare you for this. Because with skinny fat people, it's not going to come off as fast as, say, like someone who has 40 pounds to lose.
Hmm.
So I remember I remember we were dealing with one of our clients, and it was just a slow roll for him. Like, he, as opposed to people losing 2.5 or 2 pounds off their bodies a week, he was losing like 0.75 to 1 a week, and that could be pretty frustrating if you're doing everything that you feel like you have to do, and you're only seeing like this very minute drop.
Hmm.
But that is almost like something you have to go through in order to get you to where you need to be from a, let's just say, like a body fat perspective. And I always say it's like two choices. Okay, so we're going to burn body fat. We focus on that first. It's going to be a slow roll. Just let me prepare you for that. And if we choose gaining muscle, I have to prepare you. It's going to be a slow roll. So it's almost like you have to take a little bit more time with people who are skinny fat, because you're working with two separate things at once. You're working with the building of the muscle, and you're working with the burning of the fat. And these two things are preferably done separate from each other.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So would you say that it's kind of it has to be like a combination of movement and diet, like it versus
sure.
because there's some people, and I don't really get it, but there's some people that are like the diet only. They think a diet only
Mm,
can fix everything, and then there's some people that think diet doesn't matter at all. All you have to do is move. And then I guess based off of your experience, it both kind of have to work in symbiosis.
yeah, diet. Okay, so it's diet, it's exercise, it's sleep. It's also, I mean, I guess you could say water is combined with diet. And I would also say it is their perception and their reactions to stress,
Mm,
right? So, like, um, again, I feel like everything should be whole and everything should be done together, and that's where you actually get the most benefit. If you focus on diet alone, you're going to burn some muscle, and you're going to start off maybe lower and maybe in a worse spot than when you began. If you focus on only working out, then you can almost like go too hard with the workouts because you're trying to burn calories, you're trying to get in shape. You're not fixing actually what needs to be fixed when you're trying to lose weight, which is the diet. So
mm-hmm.
both of those things together, it's just like gangbusters. It's amazing. And then obviously getting the adequate amounts of recovery when you're getting like sleep 6 to 8 hours, depending on what you work with and depending on what works well with you. That obviously is a big factor in helping you not only gain muscle but also recover from your workouts. And the last part is just reaction to stress and how we're perceiving stress and how we actually and what we do with that stress. So working with entrepreneurs and just anyone in general, I feel like there's like this elevated amount of stress. And it's not you stress. It's not like the stress that actually helps you. It's the stress that actually drives you down. And I feel like everyone's stress levels are starting to rise right now.
Mm-hmm.
So what we try to do is we try to actually have them look at their stress in a very kind of like just in a way that brings awareness around it, because a lot of times when people go into these behaviors when they're reacting to stress, doing it in a very unconscious way, they're not necessarily thinking about it. So when we actually get them to focus on the stress, what happens is that they're aware of it. They understand when it's happening. They have almost like these options that they can do with it that don't have to do with eating, that don't have to do with destroying their body. And we try to push them in a certain way to actually use that stress up and use it in a way that's actually just that's good for their bodies. And I would say the stress part is the low key thing right there. And a lot of times and again, the reasons why people don't exercise, the reasons why people don't get as much sleep, and the reasons why people don't necessarily eat as well is because they're living very high stress lives and they have no idea how to manage it and what to do with it.
Yeah, I feel like if you don't get those things into check, you could have a perfect diet and a pretty solid workout routine, and you're just going to continue to kind of like self sabotage and not see results. And it's really trying to get your mind in alignment with all of that too.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. Absolutely. And also, like, I'm so glad you talked about the mind, and it's almost like you have to get yourself to see yourself almost in a different light,
Mm,
right? So a lot of people identify with the fact that they are fat, or the fact that they are obese, or they have this. They identify with what their weakness is.
Mhm.
This is going to be me, you know. So we actually need to change your mind as we change your body, because as you know, actually not a lot of people know this, but losing weight is actually easy, and everyone's done it, right? We all know people who, everybody who's lost 20, 25 pounds off their body. And what happens usually? They just put it back on,
Mhm.
and it all just comes back on,
Mhm.
right? So we need to find a way to actually manage your mind, and also to have you see yourself and identify yourself with the things that you're doing. So instead of like being like, oh man, I gotta go work out. Oh, I have to eat healthy, and I'm torturing myself. It's torture, such entitled thinking. I know, but when we actually start identifying with being a healthy person and start molding thermostat in our brains to feel comfortable when we actually drop this weight, then we can get away from self sabotage, and we can see when self sabotage happens,
Mhm.
right when it's happening, as opposed to what happens usually when it happens unconsciously. You have a little bite here, a little bite there. Next thing you know, 25 pounds later, you're back to where you were before. So we have to change the mind as much as we change the body.
It's really interesting, I guess, the comfort of identifying as things that aren't in our best interest, right? Like, so identifying with, like, I'm always late, or I'm a failure, or I'm always going to be the chubby kid. And like that's so easy to stay there, and I think it's, I guess, partially probably because it's known, so it's like the devil we know,
Mm,
versus shedding that and being like, well, who am I if I'm not these bad habits? For me, so I got pretty sick early on. Like I had really, really bad endometriosis when I was 19, to the point where I had to have like surgery to kind of like clean it out. And then I shortly after got hit with Graves' disease, which is a hyperthyroid autoimmune issue. And it got so bad because it went untreated for a long time because no one knew what was wrong with me because I looked
mm,
healthy. Everyone thought I had an eating disorder. And that's like the problem with being a woman, is like they saw a young college girl that was underweight and they were like, oh, she's just not eating. I'm like, I'm eating like a horse. Like, I promise you, I'm eating like a horse. And it just went so long that I got down to 90 pounds, which is really light for me.
wow.
My muscles atrophied. I couldn't go upstairs or use my legs anymore. So my husband actually had to carry me around. It was really, really intense. And I remember when I started recovering and I was on medication, I went to the gym and I was like, I'm gonna try to just do the leg press, like super light, and I couldn't do it. My legs still
Mm,
weren't to a point where I could do it with no weight. And I broke down. I started crying in the middle of the gym, and I was like, I will never take my health for granted again. The moment that my muscles come back, like I'm never going to look at working out like I have to. I'm going to be like, I'm blessed that my legs
mm.
work. And anytime I get into like a negative loop where I'm like, oh, I'm so tired, I don't want to go to the gym, I immediately go back to that anchor and I'm like, no, you get to. Your legs work. This is such a blessing, and like don't even for a second look at it like a bad thing, and that's helped me so much, just that
Yes.
reframing.
Yeah, it's looking at the aspect of using our bodies as a privilege,
Right.
not necessarily as a right. Especially like if you get your health taken away from you, that I hope should be enough to push you to actually never let that happen again to you,
Mhm.
right? And And the thing is, like, we take these things for granted. Um, Even the most simple things, man. Just like if you've ever sprained your ankle, what's the thing that you're hoping for? You're like, I just hope I walk properly again. And when you walk properly again, you're like, oh, stupid ankle. It's just like walking's normal to me. When the reality is that these things are not necessarily a like you have to do this and you must do this. It's literally like, yo, dude, I am living such a great life that I get to actually carve out time to go to the gym.
Mhm.
I'm able to use my body in the gym. I'm able to be like to actually increase my strength. I'm able to actually improve inside the gym. And when we start looking at these things as almost like I like it. I like to call it as like looking at it as like your sanctuaries and looking at it as like your places of healing and places of improvement.
Mm-hmm.
Then I feel like maybe more people would actually start gravitating towards it when they kind of get away from the work aspect of things and get into the aspect of like, hey, guess what, like I'm blessed to actually be in this world in the first place. I'm blessed to be using this body. I'm blessed to have an arm and a leg and hands and everything that I have right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I will not take this for granted,
Mm-hmm.
and I will use this whole body and my brain to the best of my ability,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the, I mean, fuck, man. That to me is the pinnacle of mindset. And I'm so glad you're able to just like have that moment. It's almost like that rock bottom moment,
Oh yeah.
you know? Yeah, it's just like never again. And far be it for me to say, I feel like a lot of people have to hit that rock bottom,
Mm-hmm.
you know? It's almost like they have to learn the hard way. And if you don't, and if you're listening to this and you don't have to learn the hard way, please do something about it, right? Please, please.
Right, that's what they say wisdom is. Wisdom is learning from other people's mistakes.
Yes,
Mm-hmm. And like knowledge
absolutely.
is learning from your own, and being a fool is simply not learning.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we know that on Twitter, just being on that platform.
I'll have to take it in small doses because it is like
Oh
it is
yeah.
very like it draws you in. I don't want to say addictive, but it's pretty close. It draws you in, then you're like,
Yeah.
I have to share my thoughts. It's like, no, you don't. Not
Mm.
all of the time. Take a minute.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sometimes the pause is like really good, just like
Totally.
just a little give it like, maybe like an hour to marinate, and we'll see what happens with that,
Mm-hmm.
But Twitter is awesome, man, and in social media, like a lot of people kind of a lot of people are poo pooing on it, and they're just saying, "Oh my God, it's the devil" and all this kind of stuff. And it's like the devil is only the way in which we use it. That's the devil.
Mm-hmm.
The devil is the way in which we allow ourselves to create with it or to consume with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure with Twitter as well, and just any kind of social media platform, we've learned so much. My wife has been on Instagram with like the baby advice stuff,
Uh-huh.
like crazy,
Mm-hmm.
like crazy. And our child is like so well adjusted. I'm like, well, thank you for this free information.
Uh-huh.
you know, thank you for this. Yeah, I feel like there's like almost like it's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater when people talk about social media sometimes. But man, social media is like, if you use it correctly, I feel like social media can like change your life. You
Oh,
know?
it
Yeah.
definitely can. You can definitely use it as a tool. I just think for me, I mean, it's 100% changed my life. I don't know where I would be without social media. I have no idea what
Yeah.
version I would be living out.
Same.
But it's also, it can be like really frustrating and even like sad when you do see some of the interactions because you're like, man, I don't know you, but I'm pretty certain you wouldn't be talking like this if I or whoever you're tweeting to was right in front of you. And why can't we piece that together? Like why is it so easy with this anonymity to just be the worst versions of ourselves? And I think that's
Mm,
the sucky part is you just want people
yeah.
to be doing better.
And I'll also throw this out there that guys on Twitter get treated differently than women on Twitter.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And when I see some of the interactions with like from a guy towards like say a Twitter account like yours or a
Hmm.
Twitter account like Leia's or whatever, it is, I'm just like embarrassed almost to a certain extent, because it's just like they will have the certain you will have the certain percentage of people who just use it to really outline how much hatred that they have inside of their own lives.
Hmm.
And yeah, I guess with just with anything, it's like take the good with the bad, and it is what it is, and there's always going to be a positive and negative, and same with you. I don't know where I'd be without social media
Hmm.
whatsoever, man. Like, yeah, it sounds weird to say that actually, but
Hmm.
I really don't know if we'd even be in Costa Rica right now if it weren't for social media. you know so always a good and bad to every single situation, man.
Yeah,
Always.
that's the cool thing too is a lot of people are focusing on what's I guess now being coined as nomadic wealth. So being
Yeah.
able to work virtually and really
Yes.
prioritizing that, especially given the fact that 2020 happened and you realized whatever job the kicker is when I first started in my career, everyone was like, this isn't it's not wise, it's not stable, it's not
Mm.
smart, it's not there's no longevity in it, yada yada yada. Like all of these reasons why my decisions were shit. And 2020 comes and I'm one of the few people that is already solely based off of a virtual income source,
Mm.
so it didn't really affect me, thank God. But my husband, who had, the safe route to most people, he has restaurants. Guess what
Mm.
happened to those restaurants? They're still open. And again, we
Thank God.
we were we're very fortunate that neither of us were affected like so many other people, but we had to shut down for a good amount of time. So it's
Yeah,
like you
this
don't know, right? You just want to.
you don't know, and in general, I love freedom, man.
Hmm.
You know,
Oh yeah.
like so there's mental freedom, there's financial freedom, and low key location freedom is one of those things that I have almost like gravitated to. And the reason being is because like the world has become so small,
Hmm.
and if you could work from anywhere in the world and be able to house yourself anywhere, then why the heck not? You know, and I have this thing, you know, like especially with like nomadic travel. One of the reasons why I went into let's just say uprooting my family, selling our house, taking us to Costa Rica, is for something very specific. You know, I've always lived about 10 to 20 miles away from my hometown,
Hmm.
always, right? And and I find that sometimes like that to me was like a comfort, you know, always being around the same old people and always being around others, and even the environment wasn't suited for my personality. It was like Toronto and this city. It's like the city's suburbs and like all this kind of stuff. And I remember it's just like, dude, life is. I remember telling myself at some point, it's like life is way too short to live in environments that do not suit your personality.
Hmm.
And that was actually my first foray. So I actually sold my gym in December 2018.
Good
Thankfully,
timing.
that gym is still alive. Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh, I just hope that for those owners that they're still able to keep it, you know, still able to keep it the doors open and whatnot. And they seem to be doing a good job with that. And I sold in December 2018, and then I maybe took like a month or two to kind of like figure out what I really wanted to do because I wasn't done, you know. I still wanted to do stuff, and then there's a couple of things. Number one, when I was going to start a business, I needed to be expansive. I needed to be almost like limitless to a certain extent of how I can grow it. And the other thing was I needed it to be virtual. I didn't want to be confined to a location
Hmm.
whatsoever. And yeah, you know what? Living here in Latin America for the last little bit, just like everything, we got the good and the bad. You know, I mean, the good is this environment and everything, but there's, you know, if you always got to take the negative and the positive situations as well. So there's been like a, you know, maybe we've lost a phone or maybe lost a laptop or two down here, you know, and
Hmm.
you just have to deal with those kind of like little petty crime stuff. But again, it's just, you know, I mean, man, I don't know what I'd be doing if I had to stay in Toronto for lockdown, man. Like
Oh,
I don't
so
know.
is it still locked down right now?
Yeah, it's still locked down. Like the numbers are going down. People are now they're giving you the roadmap to opening things up again, but nothing has opened up yet. They're still in lockdown, and I think it's going to get better. I really do. But I hope.
I
But
hope
I
so
am not
too.
going to be there to figure it out. You know,
So
I'm not going to be there to.
did they not release do you guys have vaccines up there
Yeah,
at
we
like
we
where
had
you are?
vaccines, but they kind of bungled up the effort and a little bit. And I always say this, right? With Canada, we're always about maybe 2 to 3 steps behind the United States. So if something is happening in the United States, I always find that probably gonna have to wait maybe like two more times the wait time to have it happen in Canada.
Hmm.
So vaccines went crazy in the United States. Everybody's partying right now. People are going to like the NBA games and whatnot. It's crazy.
Hmm.
And then Canada, people are like now we're just getting past the point of having people like, you know, vaccinated.
Wow.
And now we have enough vaccines for everybody. We didn't
Okay.
have enough vaccines for everybody. So yeah, it's a little bit slower in Canada, but now hopefully things are turning around. But still, who knows if we're going to be even staying there long term? we'll
Yeah.
see.
So what are your plans? Are you gonna like be bopping around and seeing the
Yeah.
world?
Yeah, we are gonna be bopping. It's gonna be amazing. Yeah. So, I was actually having this conversation with this real estate mentor. He's actually we're living in his villa. He's allowed their family to kind of like live in this separate casita. And he told me, he was just like, you know what, Dan, like you're in a position right now where you can just like date as many cities as you want,
Uh-huh.
right? And see as many things as you want, and kind of like figure out where exactly do you really, really, really want to set your roots. And yeah, so our first stop is going to be in Colorado. We're going to be spending time in Boulder, sometime in Aspen, sometime in Vail. Then we are going back to Toronto to actually just do a bunch of stuff, or we're building a couple of things down there, and we just have to figure those parts out and kind of like put boots to ground on that. And then most likely we're coming back here in Costa Rica for the winter time and going to be spending maybe like 3 to 4 months. And again, it's almost like our stuff is in storage right now,
Mm.
so we're really just like vagabonding it a little bit with yeah, a wife and a baby essentially.
That's really cool. Vail is one of my favorite places I've ever been
Yeah,
to. We
right.
went in when was it? Like 2 winters ago, and I was like, it is the equivalent of being in a like a snow globe. That's like what you feel like. You're
Yeah.
just in the cutest little snow globe there ever was.
Amazing. Yeah, can't wait. And we're living beside beaches right now.
Mhm.
It's almost like there's like this vortex. It's like, have you ever heard of energy vortexes and stuff?
Mhm.
It's almost like this vortex is here, and it is beach related. And I'm so looking forward to kind of like being around the mountains
Mhm.
and being just in awe of the vastness. And there's so much different, such a different energy between like a beach setting and the mountain setting. I don't know how to explain it.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it's just different, and we're looking forward to kind of like having that change of pace a little bit.
Oh, 100%. I think that when you're like towards the mountains or in like some deep forest, it's just a lot more grounding. I don't know, like you just
Yeah,
like way more centered, at least for me, because we
yeah,
live at the beach too. And I'm like, I love it. And I love like opening my doors and being able to smell like that salt air.
mm, mm.
But there, for me, there's just something way more like magical and healing about being with so much greenery and like height of mountains and vastness, all of that.
Yeah, oh man, just the aspect of being within nature and actually breathing in the greens that are around you. My friend was just telling me, is like, yeah, man, the plants are giving off sexual energy and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, dude, whatever it is, it's great. It's working. You keep on doing it. And there is just something to be said about like walking through a forest without technology
Mhm.
and walking amongst the mountains, and the almost like the change of effect that it gives your brain. You know,
Mhm.
it's I think they call it Shinryu or something like that. They call it forest bathing in Japan,
Mhm.
and it's literally just like walking into a forest and just not bringing anything with you and just being there for about 30 minutes and just bathing in the greens. And we've been able to kind of like, down here in Costa Rica, everything is like open air,
Mm.
and you can't really like eat in air. Actually, this is the reason why part of the COVID situation down here has not gone too crazy, because everyone's out in nature, everyone's like not confined inside.
Mm.
So so I found that when I'm down here, as opposed to being around like buildings and cities in Toronto, I am just less stressed. And I feel like when you live in a city, there's just like amplification of anxiety,
Mhm.
amplification of stress, amplification of needing to do something. And then down here, when you're breathing in nature and you're walking and you're not surrounded by tech and buildings, it's almost like this reduction and this like removal of stress. You're not as high strung anymore. And yeah, this is, to me, like when I'm talking about it right now, I'm like, this is a huge signal. Like, follow this right here. Pull on
Mhm.
this thread.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Isn't that the number one prescription for depression and anxiety in Japan? Like that they
I don't know if
prescribe
it's
you
number one.
that you
Yeah.
go and forest bathe?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. They prescribe you.
Mhm.
That is what they do. They prescribe you to like drop your phone off in your desk and take 4,000 steps inside of that forest, and then come back and let me know what's up. And Japan is such a subset, as well as such a really cool. it's just like a really cool, I guess you could say, sample size, because they are the highest stress people, at least from what I see from the media. But again, they are so tied into their work that they need stuff like this.
Well,
They need like forest bathing.
there's actually, I can't remember the term for it, but they actually there's a term in that's only exists in Japanese, and it's dying of overworking. Because
Yes,
they would
yes.
people would be on the subway and people would think that they were asleep and they were actually dead. They would be
Oh my god.
on their commute back home or to work and they would just die, and everyone just assumes that they're sleeping, and it was happening so often that they came up with a term for it. It is
Wow.
wild.
That scares me, man.
Mm.
Especially especially as like an entrepreneur. I mean, I don't think I've seen it happen to like any entrepreneurs like working themselves to death. Like Elon should be like fucking 20,000 feet in the ground right now. But that's actually something that does like scare me, especially with like entrepreneurship. And actually it's a pretty good fear too, because it's like the balance between really just crushing it and trying to like do as many cool things in your business to grow it, and then the balance between being with your family and trying to spend as much time with them, trying to like trying to be there, to be actually seeing your child grow,
Mhm.
and then the balance with your health and the balance with your body. So one thing that I'm always like, I guess like coming from like a fitness aspect, I'm always trying to make sure I'm like scheduling in my exercise, and I'm scheduling in my family time, especially now that the business is getting like more complex.
Mhm.
And I feel like I need to do that, because I don't want to be that guy in the subway, like giving up his life just to work and just to make like a couple extra dollars and whatnot. So yeah,
We were
something to think about.
We were at the park the other day and we always saw this woman with this little girl and we thought that it was the little girl's mom because they look similar and the age, all that. We just assumed. And we come to find out it was the nanny. And no judgment, like I have a nanny,
Yeah,
right? So like I think it's very useful, especially if you're a bit you have other aspirations other than just being a parent.
yeah.
Um, but she was like asking like where does so and so live, and just like engaging with the kid, like like talking about friends and family members. And she goes, where do mommy and daddy live? And the little girl said, in their office. And my husband and I looked at each other and we're like, whoa. The little girl's like maybe 3.
Yeah,
And we're like, it is alarming how aware they are, right? Like
yeah,
little kids are just they see
yeah.
everything at such a young age, and it's like everything's a trade-off. So you will probably never achieve what you would have achieved if you didn't have kids. Can you
Yeah,
still achieve greatness? Absolutely. Elon has what, like 5 kids?
yeah,
And he's like the richest man in the world and trying to bring our species to be multiplanetary. So very lofty goals. So yeah, you can absolutely achieve greatness as a parent. It just probably is going to look a little bit different than if you weren't a parent. So, I guess what's your perspective on balance, because you see a lot,
mm,
and I pick on this guy a lot, but I just fundamentally disagree with what he puts out there is Gary V. I just don't like
okay,
that guy. I think he offers really shitty advice to everybody. I hate
yeah,
hustle culture. There was this video that he recently put out where he was like scheduling 1 hour of family time. And I was like,
yeah,
you want to see your family 1 hour a day? Like you feel fulfilled? You feel like a good dad? You feel like a good husband? There's no way. There's no way.
mm,
So like
mm.
what's your balance like? How do you do it without feeling like you're doing a shitty job at work or you're doing a shitty job at home?
Well, number one is going to be scheduling the time that you need, and also using Parkinson's law as well. So Parkinson's law to me is just like whatever work that you give yourself within a specific time frame, that is the work that's going to get completed if you're giving yourself a deadline. So I make it a point after 4 p.m. I'm not touching anything. I may be on Twitter and like replying back to people or whatever, but I'm literally not at work,
Mhm.
and I'm not doing work things whatsoever. That is family time.
Mhm.
And when it comes to balance, it's really just like a prioritization of time, right? And Gary's like, I'm going to give 1 hour to his family out of 24. Well, that means that you value your family 1 out of 24, right? That is the amount that you actually value your family.
Mm.
So whenever I look at a guy's priorities, I'm always looking at the schedule, and just if his schedule is like 99% like business, then guess what? That's the only thing that is 99% of what matters to him.
Mm,
So men lie, women lie, but your schedule will never lie.
mm,
So I look at what is prioritized, and I make sure that my work time is my work time and no one can get in on it, that I'm scheduling in my workouts and my workouts are non-negotiables. And also I'm trying to create a business that is not about hustle culture. Culture. I don't understand. It's not about hustle culture. It's not about like trying to work like 12-hour days and trying to be as big as possible and trying to just like sacrifice everything in order to get a goal. I actually feel like you can, if you actually give it a bit of thought and strategically do it in a certain way, you can have the goal and you can have the lifestyle all at the same time,
mm-hmm,
right? And I don't watch Gary Vee that much. Not I do know like what his message is, but in general, like there are very a great many ways in which to actually own and operate and grow a business. So I try to look for Archimedes' lever essentially when it comes to business, and for me, Archimedes' lever is actually having like really awesome people. Like literally, I have a COO, we have a team, and my CEO is like, you should not be doing like any of the stuff you don't necessarily want to do. You should actually be pure on vision and creating, and that's all you're going to do,
mm-hmm,
right? So it's just having a team of people that can, basically have that, or that can actually, make you focus on the things that you're greatest at.
mm-hmm.
So that gives you joy, and at the same time, you can cut yourself off, and you can say, okay, enough is enough. I did my work for the day. I just have to go to the next day, and then just making sure that you're looking at your schedule, and then understanding that your schedule is going to show you exactly where your priorities are.
Mm-hmm.
So adjust accordingly.
Yeah, and I think relating it to what you've brought up a bunch of times is active recovery. Like so many
Yeah,
people when they're focusing on their body, like they want to skip stretching, right? Or they want
yeah,
to skip like myofascia release. Like they think all of
mm,
that's like just fluff and it's not going to make a difference, but it makes all of the difference, right? Like if you're not doing those things, you're not healing that muscle that you just tore up, or your joints aren't going to be working at their prime,
yeah,
right? So it's the
yeah,
same thing that I look at balancing your life is you want to do that active recovery. You want to have that reward. Otherwise, what is it
yes,
all for? So if you don't get to see your
yeah,
baby laughing, or if you don't get to, have those romantic connections with your partner, it's like, what is this all for?
yeah.
Mhm.
It's like it's almost like, you know, do you see your family as work or recovery,
Mm,
right?
right.
And especially with people who are addicted to work,
Mhm.
right? They're sad, they work. They're angry, they work. Something happened that was great. Okay, we're going back to work, and they just make their
Mhm.
lives about work. And
Mhm.
and the thing is that like when they look at their families, they're like, oh my god, I got to put a bunch of time into this kid. I got to be active. I got to be present. I got to be away from my phone. And they're looking at all of these kind of things. When the reality is that when you actually become, let's just say, a parent who is willing to show up to be the best parent that they can possibly be, that brings in itself the rewards. And part of the rewards is no therapy for your kids. Hopefully no therapy later on in their life.
Mhm.
Hopefully, but
Mhm.
the other thing is this immense amount of connection that you have with your child and with your spouse. And that itself is almost like soul
Oh
active
yeah.
recovery for your soul. Because like at work, you're not necessarily getting loved, you're not necessarily getting hugged. And when you're with your family, it's like you don't have to think about all that stuff anymore. You could just be with them and not talk about it, and actually be in the presence of actually seeing the world through a child's eyes again.
Mhm.
And yeah, I have this thing. It's like I work from home, so sometimes like I'm working at my desk, and then my daughter will come and crawl over. She'll go to my chair and look up at me. I'm just like, fuck. Let's take off my headphones and like, all right, let's go.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you know. But so for some people, it'll be like, how dare you, get in my flow? And then for me, I'm just like, you know what? Like, fuck, this is life.
This is
You
life.
this is life. And work is life too, but this is really life, and I want to prioritize this. And
Mhm.
actually, with your children as well, I feel like it's like they give you attention. You need to give that attention back to them.
Mhm.
You need to let them feel seen.
Mhm.
You need to let them feel heard.
Mhm.
So every time that they look at you, they're not going to be like, "Oh, daddy's like in the office all the time." They're going to be like, "Hey, anytime I need my daddy, I can just like turn around and talk to him." You
Mhm.
know. So yeah,
Especially
it's
at this age too, because I don't know if this is a thought that goes on in your mind, but it's one of my ruminating. So it's one of the ones that's there every day at some point. And it's like you don't know which memory is going to be the first one because we're not there yet. We're
yeah,
approaching first memory territory. And it could be anything. It could be something that is negative, scary, it could be amazing, right? And I want to do everything in my power to make sure that that first one is a good one or at least a
yeah,
neutral one. I don't want it to be like I was reaching up for my mom and she was on her phone. Like, oh my gosh, like that would be like a dagger. I wouldn't be able to
yeah,
handle that. So just being like hyper aware of that fact, I think helps a lot. And I don't wanna
yeah,
be like you said, I don't wanna be the one that's like, I can't go to them right now because 'cause they're in the office. It's like, "No, if you
yeah,
need me, I'm here. What's up?"
yeah,
And there are definitely moments where I'm in the flow of something and he comes up and I'm like, "Oh, man, I was really doing something and I was making some great work," but, like, in that moment, I get to decide what's my priority, and it's gonna be him, right?
yeah,
Unless it's, like,
absolutely,
an emergency on something else and he is not in an emergent state, then sure, like, that's
yeah.
different, but he's gonna be the priority. Um, and
Kids,
I think
man,
when you mentioned like is the family work or is the family like your recovery is so huge,
yeah,
it's one of those compounding problems too. So it's like the more time you spend away from your family, the more disconnected you get. And then I think with that comes a lot of fear and anxiety because you're like, I don't know these people I'm sharing my space with. So it's
yes,
like, well, what are we going to talk about
yes,
at dinner? I've nothing. I'm not can't talk to them about spreadsheets. So then you
yeah,
avoid it even more and then compound, compound, compound. So it's like the sooner you
yeah.
can kind of tackle that problem head on and just understand maybe it's going to be uncomfortable for those first couple dinners because you have had your priorities shifted. But if you can lean into that and accept that without like your ego getting into the way, then you can heal and then, reprioritize your life.
Yeah, one of the things that I try to do as much as possible is like is try to get down to their level as much as possible.
Mm,
And as a guy and as somewhat of an intellectual, sometimes you're like with a baby and you're like, you can't have a conversation with them. They're living a different world than you've even experienced. That you are experiencing right now.
mm-hmm,
So sometimes as a guy, it's like hard to get down and be like, start playing and start doing goofy stuff and like all this kind of stuff. But we have to like for me, I actually connect so much with my daughter when I'm trying to get down to where she's at
mm,
and trying to release like any kind of like preconceived notions. And I think Gabor Mate said this. He was just like one of his biggest mistakes as a parent was trying to get his child to grow up so fast. He's trying to be like, well, I can't act like that, so I'm not going to interact with him, right?
mm,
When that actually does irreparable damage.
mm-hmm,
When the child itself, like far be it from us to say, it's like you relating to the child. What if the child can't relate to you? Oh man, that hurts as a parent.
mm-hmm,
And and if a child can't relate to you, then guess what's going to happen? They're actually going to seek time away. They're going to be into things that they are more comfortable with.
mm-hmm,
Or they're going to be with mommy more. If daddy's not giving the attention, they're going to be just going on mommy, and they're going to feel closer to mommy, and they're going to feel like daddy's this like stranger who lives in the house.
mm-hmm,
And I come from an immigrant family, and our family had to work hard, and I'm pretty sure actually your family had to work hard just to get you guys to where you were, right? Like just to get you guys, like for us, we went from poor to middle class, and that's something I've seen my parents do, and I'm just like, dude, I'm so thankful. Thank you so much for that. But I saw them work 12-hour days,
mm-hmm,
and I saw them work 24-hour days. They were barely at home. We had to do all of our catching up, literally, at like 30 years
mm-hmm.
old.
Wow.
That's when we started to mend our relationships with each other.
Yeah.
And now we're talking every single week and all this kind of stuff. But the thing is that like if you have a chance to like be there as much as possible for your kid, and to create your schedule and to create your life to actually have like a parent, and if not two parents,
Mhm.
around. Oh
Mhm.
my god, like I feel like that kid will be a lot more well adjusted. I feel like they're going to be a lot more confident, a lot more secure in themselves, and you're just going to have like just an easier child to deal with when you're at home. And you're
Mhm.
going to have fun with it too because you're like relating to them, you
Mhm.
know? Yeah.
I think there's a magic that happens when you have a child. It's like you get to re-experience life. Everything is different, and you can't really explain it to a non-parent because it's going to sound so stupid, but like when he was a newborn, so he was born in December, so we had all of like the lights up and like the Christmas lights, and
Nice.
he was fascinated. Like, I mean, couldn't take his eyes off of the tree or off the lights that were on the banister. And just like watching him interact with something as simple as that is like, wow. Right. Or watching him as he develops. It's like 1 week he can't use his hands, right? He can't actively
Mm.
like pick something up. And then all of a sudden something clicks and you see that recognition and you're like, this is mad, like the human experience is so magical and I just haven't been appreciating it, and it takes this to kind of rediscover that. And I don't want to
Yeah.
lose that, and I'm sure that that continues throughout all of the stages because it's like as soon as you get out of the newborn phase and you get into the baby and then baby into toddler and so on, it's like it's such a different reality, right?
Mm.
And if you miss those windows, you're missing the development of the human you created.
Yeah, and who's teaching your kid,
Mhm.
right? Like who is teaching your kid?
Mhm.
And is there's something to be said about like, let's just say like my daughter, she just learned how to suck on straws.
Oh, mine
And then
too.
how
He just did, yeah, yeah.
yeah. And how they learn is because they saw you.
Yep.
No, and then they start doing it.
Mhm.
There is something visceral about that,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's like you were taught this before, and then now you're passing off this wisdom to this next generation,
Mhm.
right? There's something very visceral about taking on that role, and I've in the back of my mind, it's like no matter how much money I make, like I just don't. I want to be there as much as possible, to be there to see these like moments.
Mhm.
Even our kid, like our daughter's starting to stand right now, and I don't, if she started to stand and started to walk, and I wasn't there for that, man, I just think there would be like some form of regret,
Mhm.
So we get to see things almost like anew a little bit, and we get to see things from their perspective, from their point of view, and we get to actually understand that life is this like most amazing journey and trip, and a lot of things that we're looking at that we see around us is like taken for granted.
Mhm.
I remember just watching the movie Soul, and his whole
So
thing was just
good.
like, yeah, his whole thing was like becoming the best jazz musician, but the reality was is that the purpose was to see every single thing as if it was like brand new to you, and to enjoy life that way. And I feel like if we can do that, then babies are almost like our teachers to a large extent to help us get
Mhm.
there as well.
Mhm. My favorite one of my favorite scenes from that movie, there's a lot. We've already seen it like 3 times because
Nice.
there's so much valuable information. Like anyone who hasn't seen it, go check it out. Um It's when they were focusing on the lost souls and
Mhm.
they were like, "Oh no, we got another hedge fund guy coming in." And I was like, "That's amazing." And then finally the hedge fund guy like breaks out of being lost and he throws everything off of his desk and he's so
Yeah.
excited and he's going to start living cuz he found his life again. And I'm like, "That's so beautiful." But how many of us have been or are still one of those lost souls that are just it's almost like I don't know if you saw it this way, but I looked at it kind of like flow. It looked like the shaman guy would get into flow and then he would go into like this astral plane, and then the dark side of that flow, which would be like the hedge fund guy, is the lost soul. You like lose your
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah.
Um so it's like how many of us are there, and what do we need for us to have that awakening?
Yeah. I feel like every single person on this planet has like this one thing that they're just meant to do.
Mhm.
And actually, it's not one thing. It's like multiple things, and one thing leads to another thing, and leads to another thing, and leads to another thing, and it's almost like this like journey of milestones. And I remember I was like working the rat race, and I was living the corporate life, and I remember this is before I got into fitness. I was doing the 9 to 5, and I was actually at a job that I was getting paid very well at, and I hated.
Mm.
And just like you know, I actually, when you went into online, I told everyone, hey, guess what, guys, I'm gonna become a trainer, and everyone's like, no, don't do it. Like, and I was just like, I feel like I'm pulled to do this.
Mhm.
It's actually quite easy for me. I love reading about it. I love learning about it. And this was like 18 years ago, when training is not the Instagram models. It wasn't as like sexy as it is right now. They actually saw personal training as like a side job. It
Mhm.
was, I think it was like yeah, it's almost like 19 in the 1990s or just the 2000s or something like that. But I ended up uh, I ended up going into training and loving it. It's almost like that thing where you're doing something and you look up at the clock and you're just like, holy crow, like where did all that time go?
Mhm.
Like, and that's one of like those signals of flow that I just love. And I remember after kind of like taking that choice, and I don't want to make light of the choice because the choice was so hard because everyone's telling me not to do it, and I was going to make less than what I was making. I was going to take a very significant pay cut, and I was just like, well, fuck it, I got to do this, and I don't know why, but I feel pulled to do this. So I ended up. So when I ended up doing that, it is like it is almost like you're not an imposter anymore. You're not a fraud. You are literally doing something that feels just so good to you, and it's actually helping other people.
Mhm.
I felt like my other job was actually hurting other people. So we were selling high interest loans to like people, and I was like, that's like the most biggest embarrassing job I've ever had in my entire life.
Mm.
But when you actually do something that you feel like you're being pulled on this earth to do, it gives you energy. It gives you a sense of fulfillment. It gives you a sense of purpose. It gives you a sense of mission. And and yeah, there are some people out there who just out of fear, out of doubt, will this work out?
Mhm.
Out of comfort, sometimes they just have a hard time trying to make that choice. But if they're willing to kind of like abandon the ships and really just like create a plan where I'm going to do this for 1 year, I'm going to really try at it, and if freaking suck, then I can go back to what I'm doing.
Mhm.
If they can find themselves to do that, I swear to God, like I've never seen anyone do that and look back with regret.
Mhm. Yeah, that
Yeah.
pull that you get is so interesting because I've had a similar one as well when I was trying to make pretty big decisions for my life. And you could sit there and make a list all day, but that doesn't really make a dent in the reality of making that decision. All you can say is, I really feel like I have to do this thing. And then when you step into it, it's like, wow, like this is the most authentic decision I've made. I'm like finding who I am. And then that's
Yeah.
when you're just like, you're truly happy on like a different level that you didn't even know you could be at.
I feel like when we make these decisions, and this is actually something that I was going through, kind of making this transition, and these decisions are going to come up at the pinnacle moment. So, like when you're feeling the most comfortable with something, let's just say even for me, it was training. I was feeling very comfortable being a trainer in a gym. Then I had that pull that said, okay, well, we got to go off on our own. I don't really want to go off on my own. I'm making a lot of money right now. Like you get these pulls at certain milestones,
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost like you have to trust yourself. All right, let's do this. And I actually say, like, sometimes to make these decisions, you have to pretend like everyone in your life has passed away
Wow.
because yeah, it's weird, right? Because we carry around these parental, these familial and cultural almost expectations of what we should be doing.
Mm.
And and when people go into certain areas of life and go into certain vocations, is it really their choice, or is it because they've been trained to want to be in there, right?
Mm.
So when we make these decisions that are going to fulfill us to the nth degree, and we're really going into something that's passionate but is also a big risk, you almost have to pretend as if like, okay, so if I was going to make this decision and no one around me, and I didn't have to live up to anyone else's expectations around me, what decision would I make for myself? And I had to do that actually, like Yeah, I had to do that, to become a trainer. Because my family was kind of like against it, which is fine. Totally cool. But at the same time, like, you know, it's almost like I had to release those expectations of my parents to go into something that I felt was going to truly fulfill my soul,
Mm,
and especially culturally. I don't know. I can't speak for Japanese people. Um, I can speak for Chinese people, and I've heard this a lot from people that live in India. Is that there's so much parental pressure, there's so much cultural pressure to do certain things, to be a certain person,
mhm,
and for us to break out. And actually, I think that for us to be full human beings, we have to break out of these expectations of culture. We
mhm.
have to break out of these expectations from family and really do things that we feel pulled to do, as long as they help other people and are to detriment to others.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't agree more. It's like stepping into your authentic self is it's impossible when you have everyone else's version of who you should be weighing you down. And it's tough
Yeah.
because it even without like realizing it, us as parents, right? We are trying to do our best and I think most of our parents tried to do the best with what they had and they didn't know what they were doing. So it's hard to separate like, is this me or is this my mom's stuff? Is this me or
Mm,
is this my dad's stuff? Is this me or is this like what everyone says is to be like a good little contributing member of society's stuff? And some, I feel like deep down you know, but it's scary because if it deviates from any of those things, then you fear the consequence of that. And it's
yeah.
like how if you're a risk averse person, how do you overcome the fear of that and then make that decision to be authentic? Because for some people, it might be better to sacrifice yourself, that like who you want to be, than to take that risk.
Yeah. And like you said, you actually have to get rid of the old. It's always like you have to get rid of the old you,
Mhm.
and that can be scary for a lot of people because like we all lean on crutches.
Mhm.
We all lean on certain things that make us feel comfortable,
Mhm.
and whether that's like that we're identified in our culture or identified with being a good mama's boy, a good daddy's boy, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's like we have to let go of that version of ourselves in order to become the version that we feel is like possible. Now, how do we get over this fear? I don't think it's about getting over that fear. I think it's about perceiving and managing it. So when I think about the fear, if I can actually put down the fear in a more realistic way, then it makes sense to me. And I'm a little bit more on the analytical side.
Mhm.
So for people who are analytical, maybe this works for you. And I like to say, okay, cool. If I do this, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen to me? Like literally write it out.
Mhm.
Okay, people will leave me. I'm gonna have to find. I'm gonna have to sleep in my parents' basement. I have to move back with my parents or whatever it is. Like, what are all the things that are the worst possible situation that could happen as a result of making this extremely scary decision? And then you write those down,
Mhm.
and at least you have them on paper and not inside of your brain. Because
Yeah.
when they're in your brain, what happens is that they will eat you alive and they will destroy you, and they will cause you not to do the thing that you want to do.
Mhm.
So after you get analytical and you say the worst case possible, you make it as real as you can, then I would go into, okay, well, cool. Like, what's the best possible thing that could happen?
Mhm.
Like if I put everything into this 100% and I worked every day and I just focused on getting better and focused on figuring it out, what could happen? What's the good things that can happen? Oh well, I wouldn't be feel like I'd be going to work every day. I'd feel like I'm just like taking a vacation because I'm doing something I freaking love, or I feel like I'm actually helping people.
Mhm.
I am actually helping people improve, and
Mhm.
I'm actually helping people get better. I mean, what could be better than that? I could get paid very handsomely if I learn how to like monetize this, and that it can be done. I've seen people do it. Then maybe I can make a living for myself. Maybe we can actually like make more than we were making before. And at least make that part real. And then afterwards, what I would say is like, okay, well, cool. Now, what has to happen in order to make this happen?
Mhm.
What do we got to do? And actually, let's peel back. What's the goal right here?
Right.
Is it to change jobs? Is it to what is the destination that would have you feeling really good?
Mhm.
What's the motivations behind that? And then what are the obstacles
Mhm.
that are going to prevent you
Mhm.
from getting to this goal? And then what are solutions to getting over this? What's the plan to get over each and every one of these things? And then what we're doing is like we're literally making this as real as humanly possible. So it doesn't feel like this dream. And it doesn't feel like this vision.
Mm.
It feels like it's actually like possible.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just I don't. You're never gonna get over the fear.
Yep.
The only way to get over the fear is to literally do the thing that you're fearing to do.
The anticipation is
And
the
to
worst part.
yes, the anticipation and also like the building up in your brain of like how hard it's gonna be, how much change there is gonna be, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, the fear is literally everything that's going on up here. And then once you start actually taking action towards it, start seeing results, then almost like that fear dissipates and then it turns into okay, well like how can I grow this? How can I make this better? How can I like, scale this up a little bit?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and you kind of have to say when you're doing like that cost benefit analysis, it's also on the opposite end too, right? Like what if I don't? What's the
Yeah.
worst that happens if I don't? Am I going to be on my deathbed and
Yes.
think that I lived this fraudulent version of myself,
Yes.
right? And to me,
Yes.
that's the worst possible outcome. So there's nothing scarier than that. So if you feel this pull and like you said it's not hurting anybody, right? You're not doing anything devious, then or
Yeah.
devious in a bad way.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I've lived my life with that tenet. It's like, am I going to look back on my life and regret that I didn't do this?
Right.
I mean, if this is the only life that we have to live, that's gonna suck so bad. So my whole life has almost been around, okay, well, am I gonna look back on my life and regret not doing this? If so, we got to do it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's great.
yeah,
Well, this has been amazing. Thank you
yes.
so much. Do you want to tell the listeners where they can follow you and how they can support you and any like projects that you might be working on?
Absolutely. So we have the High Performance Founder podcast. That's a podcast dedicated to entrepreneurs who want to build high performing bodies in a way that actually gives you the least amount of stress and the most amount of ease. So that's the podcast. So if you're listening, please go there. And then, if anything, if you want to find me, go to one of two places. I'm on Twitter a lot, as Candice, as you know. So I'm at twitter.com/fitfounder. And my main website is highperformancefounder.com. You can find me in any of those three places. And Candice, this has been an incredible conversation. I'm so glad I had this with you.
Me
I
too.
really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'll have to have you back on and check in on you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, that's it for this week's episode. If you enjoyed the podcast, please, I need your help. So, the number one way that we can guarantee the success of this podcast is with you. So, if you could simply leave a 5-star review if you enjoyed the content, share it with a buddy, or go and click that little link that says Buy Me Coffee on chattingwithcandice.com. All of those things help out a ton. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, all of the funds get directly put back into the podcast to help it grow and be its best and highest version of itself. I couldn't do this without you. I love you all. Have a good night.